Idealism prevails. Make the world a better place.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of IP, today a very special guest. I'm very happy that he is here. Abdalla Sharief, he's the director of the UNCAV at the UN in Vienna. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for taking the time.
I thank you also, and I thank your team, Idealism, for this possibility for me to come here to speak about our concern and to reflect the work of UNCAV, or what you have pronounced UNCAV, UNCAV, United Nations Correspondents Association in Vienna.
Okay, UNCAV.
UNCAV.
United Nations Correspondents Association
in Vienna.
All right.
So that is it.
Thank you, thank you. No, it should be correct.
Okay.
Before we get to what it is and what it does, I would like to ask you, from my research I found out you're actually a scientist.
Yes.
Yes, you're a chemical
engineer. Yes.
Who has been working mainly with water?
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
I was studying, well, I came as a scholar or on a scholarship to the how you call it, socialist countries. So I got a scholarship to study at the Technical University of Budapest at the 70s. And there I got my degree. So during my university time, I used to go to Germany to work as a student in the holidays. So I was connected to some German scientists, and after I finished my studies, I got to, the possibility or scholarship also to work at the Institute of Chemistry of Water at the Technical University of Budapest, and in Technical University of Vienna, of Munich. This is in Munich, Bayer. And in the 80s, then came this idea to establish the Horn of Africa News Agency. So that is it.
In 1991, you became the president of HORNA.
Director.
Right, pardon me,
yes.
the director of HORNA, the Horn of Africa News Agency.
In Vienna.
In Vienna.
Yes.
Can you explain what HORNA is? And
well, first I go a little backward to my time in Germany. There I got to know the ambassador of Somalia, and also a very active journalist from Eritrea, and also another journalist from Sudan. And we met in, they called me to come to Bonn, because that time Bonn was the capital of Federal Republic of Germany. And there, born the idea of we from Horn of Africa countries. When I say Horn of Africa countries, I mean Sudan and Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and now you can add also with South Sudan. So that time was the idea, we people of the Horn of Africa living here, who are a little bit close to the media, or those who are graduated here in Europe. So it is the time that instead of just watching and listening to others, speaking about our problems, representing us, why not that we ourselves to make a step and to establish news agency so that we speak about our problems and cooperate with the European here in some journalistic work We know it is very difficult, who is going to finance it, but from the beginning till now, we decided we have to finance that ourselves. So in that environment or in that atmosphere, born the Horn of Africa News Agency.
And it's still running? It's running?
It's running till now. And because we get the resistance to exist or also to live. And we have our office in Germany. We have here, also in Somalia, but it is closed. We have some representatives in Sudan, in Ethiopia, not very much represented there, but we are a small news agency. It is not that huge.
But the idea was to take the narrative into your own hands,
yes,
and not have other people talking about you down there in Africa,
yes,
but African journalists telling the stories from their perspective. Is that correct?
That is true. And of course, you know, honestly, you know, to pretending, you know, presenting all Africa, I mean, it is too much.
Place, yeah.
So for that reason, you know, we were concentrated in the Horn of Africa. But besides that, if any issues or any problems in other African countries, we used to react also.
I'm very interested. We've got to follow up with this, and I would like to know where we can actually
yes,
then catch the news. Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Let us now go the next step, because that's not the only thing you do.
Yes.
You are now the director of UNCAV.
The president.
The president. You see, sorry, I'm
what
getting
is the
this.
difference between being director or president? But I think in the
right, sorry.
statute.
Pardon
yes,
me, I
yes,
always get these titles
no
wrong.
problem.
UNCAV, we had it, the United Nations Correspondents Association in Vienna.
Yes,
so,
yes.
and now please do tell me what it does.
Well, it consists of the journalists who are accredited to the VIC, that is Vienna International Center, or the UN in Vienna. Many journalists coming from outside Austria, when they come here to cover the UN events, such like events of the atomic energy, or the UNIDO, or the Office of Drugs, they come here and stay maybe for 1 week or maybe less. So they are accredited here, and they leave, you know, after the events is finishing. But other journalists, especially from the neighboring countries, from Arab countries, and some from Africa, they are accredited here to stay here for a long time. And at the beginning of the 90s, because the digital revolution was not like today, people must be there to receive the informations. So we used to be, how you call it, not 100, but less, maybe 50 journalists located there at that building of the VIC. But nowadays, because of the digital revolution, so everyone from his office, from his house, where he stays, he can get, you know, direct the information, whether from New York or from Vienna, Geneva, or also from here. So these journalists, that time, we had the feeling we have to establish our association to facilitate our work here with the UN and also with the Austrian institutes or institutions. And because also Austria is not large, because here from Vienna to go to Vienna, to go to Budapest or to go to Bratislava, it doesn't take a long time. So I think the location of Vienna also make it possible for many journalists to stay, to take Vienna as a residence, and they try to do from their job here. And some journalists, you know, they come from Africa, they come from the Arab countries, new here, they need help, you know, to be connected to the different Austrian institutions, and also in the building itself, they need that help.
You said something very interesting. It was one of my questions, how journalism has changed in your opinion, but you said that because of digitalization and people working from the home office,
yes.
they are not any longer in the Vienna International Center.
Yes,
I think that's quite a shame. Wasn't that nice to be with everybody together, or is it better now?
Well, for me personally, it was better before, because really we had also, socially, we were connected to each other. And our connection to the UNIS, United Nations Information Service, so every day somebody come from that office, with papers to give us those papers, and then, we sit down and we read it in English, of course, or, I mean, the UN languages, most English, and then come French and Arab language. So that time, I mean, the connection was much better. But now, you get the information, you get news from somebody, you don't have any connection to him or to it, So I think it was much better before. This is my personal feelings.
Do you think, this is interesting, I didn't think about that before, but if you get information, like we talk now, we talk eye to eye, yes. And if I feel uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable, then I feel that.
Yes.
Has that maybe something to do also with the sources being worse now, or people getting a lot of news on their mobile phone from somewhere without any way of actually tracking the source?
Well, that time I think the information is stronger. When really you have the personal feeling to the guy or to the anyone who bring you this information. Like before, for example, you get the paper, and after that maybe you call and you go to his office. So really that enable you not to concentrate only on the papers you have received. You will get many other things, and then maybe he has the feeling to tell you more. Right. So that is, I think, what I can tell you now.
So let's hope maybe we find a new way of communicating, yes. And bring it together, because I also think that's a shame.
We hope, but the changing time is so fast. We hope that we can also be fast, to reach, these changes or to control them.
Let me stay with the issue of journalism in general a little bit. Last year, in 2016, it was around 48 journalists that were killed, murdered, yes. In action, and it was around 259 that were imprisoned. In 2017, where we are now already, unfortunately, 27 have given their life to their, yes, cause, yes. And the imprisoned have exploded, because especially the Turkey situation. Yes. I don't want to go into specific, yes, politics. Yes, this is, yes, not our thing. Has it become more difficult and dangerous to be a journalist again? I mean, it was never an easy job, but is it just a feeling, or is it getting more difficult again, more dangerous?
Yes, it depends, because being journalist is also relative. Some journalists, work in very dangerous areas. You cannot compare them, to those who are just sitting here in Vienna and enjoying, the beauty of Vienna, the sun, and all these things. Because I went to some African countries where the risk is very high, and I know personally some journalists, I know them, who lost their lives. So here, I'm not going to mention any country, but really they are our colleagues, and with that problem, really we have to deal with it. We at the UN, in the UNCAV, also we received calls from some journalists, to stand or to make action against some problems, for the journalists who killed, and that was against, some countries. But our situation at the UN always, how you call it, we are not so free, But I think maybe some of our colleagues, they feel free, to support or to take action. But I am with you, you know, this is something very important because we got some call, you know, for example, to participate in some conference and to make a call together in New York. And I'm not going in details, but so this issue is a very important issue, and we deal with it.
You said it's difficult. I guess it is because, as with the UN in general, one has to see that all interests of all that are represented are in some form respectfully treated. Let us go to the topic of the UN itself. Relatively few people around me are actually aware that Vienna is one of the four, but maybe the second most important, and one could debate that.
The three.
Oh, three, sorry, the three.
After New York and Geneva.
So,
Yes.
New York, Geneva,
and
then comes Vienna.
Yes.
Let us talk a little bit about in Vienna. What is going on in Vienna? What's going on in the Vienna International Center? It was started in 1980. It opened in 1980 officially. What's happening there?
No, the building, VIC, I think, built 79.
79.
This is the building itself. But the UN, I think, if you are speaking about the UNIDO opened its office here in the 60s, and also the atomic energy. But I think that building came as a gift from Kreisky. He built it, and I think symbolic, the UN paid the Austrian government, I think, 1 shilling or something like that. And I think it is the biggest achievement, I think, for Kreisky and also for the Austrians, because really this is something which makes every Austrian to be proud.
Should.
How they made it, really.
Should, yeah.
And the department or the from the UN here, such as atomic energy is not directly under the umbrella of the UN, but it is under the umbrella of the, how you call it, Security Council. But the members at the atomic energy, almost they are the members of the UN. And the UN organizations, you find such like the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, you know, more with the industry and works with, I mean, more with development countries, such in Africa, or South America, or maybe also Asia. And they offer feasibility studies, for example, because for every project, you need a pre-feasibility study, maybe, and after that, another stage, full feasibility study. So the UNIDO can help, you know, on that issue. The atomic energy agency, which had their general conference 2 weeks ago, of course, you know, deal with the atomic problems and issue. And in our mind, of course, the Iranian and atomic, how you call it, reactor. So this is, I think, what people knows. Mm-hmm. Of course, also the Office of the Drug Control.
Yes, the
this is also
drug
important.
agency. And human trafficking is, do you
yes,
have?
Deal with, yes, also deal with, because this is a crime, because for drugs and crime. And human trafficking.
So
yes.
That's in one. So let's repeat
yes.
it. It's the UNIDO, which is a development agency
yes.
for what we used to call third world countries, or for,
yes.
yeah, there's a
yes.
strange terminology. Then we have the Atomic Agency, which
Agency.
is under the Security Council,
yes.
not associated.
Yes.
And then we have what a lot of people really also don't know, the drug agency and the human trafficking, which has become such a huge problem.
Yes, yes. This is in one agency, and the director of the drugs office and also crime is the same time he is the director of the UN in Vienna.
Okay. Well, you said something very, very nice. For me, I remember it was a fairly big scandal at the time when the building started in '77. I think it started. It was a huge discussion about the building itself architecturally, and there was the people who were for it, and there were people against it. And you said that all Austrians should be proud that it's such an important place for the representation of the United Nations. I agree with you, but I don't think that there is enough awareness. When you go into the building, and we had the pleasure to go there, it's very funny. It's like a spaceship, like an island in Vienna. You suddenly stop into this, into this international world. How do you perceive it? You live in Austria.
Yes.
How long, may I ask?
Well, since 91.
Right.
Or 92.
So that's a long time.
A long time, yes.
How do you perceive the relationship of the Austrian population towards this international community in its midst?
Well, if I understand you well, I think the majority of the staff members here, they are Austrians. And if in the first district here in Vienna, I met with some Austrians, maybe the way he talks, I know that he is international staff, because the working in that building gives an Austrian who come there to work the opportunity to meet with people from different countries, America, Australia, and that, always has an effect in the behavior of somebody. So when you work with people from different countries, different cultures, of course this will affect you. And I take also the example from myself. When I came to study to Hungary, a young African, then it was all new for me. And I lived every year with somebody from different continent. So my roommate, he was from Bolivia, from Cuba, from Vietnam. Another roommate, he is from the Arab countries, from DDR. So this is also, I think, a very good experience, a very good knowledge, a very good, how you call it, help in working together to understand the people. So the same thing I think here at this building of VIC to the Austrian people, And I think economically, also the city of Vienna, I think is happy to have this building here. Today, before I came here, the building of Vienna, I think, has a gathering or something like a small festival, informative festival for the international staffs to bring them near to have more information about Vienna, and I got also some prospects with me in English and also in French. So I think this is the about the Austrians who are working in that building and the relations to this international staffs.
Let's talk for a moment. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's such a big issue. Yeah. But they're the Austrians that live and work outside the building.
Yes.
You said you came to Hungary in the 70s. Yeah?
Yes,
yeah, was
beginning of the 73.
Interesting.
Yes.
And you came here to Vienna in 1991.
Yes, yeah.
Now, if I may ask you, was it difficult to integrate here? Is there, because we often perceive that friends of mine who come from abroad, like they visit from Pakistan, or they visit from Nepal, or my friends from Tunisia, or whatever, you name it. Yes. There is, not everywhere, but there is still, let's call it a distance.
Yes.
Did you have to struggle with that?
Me, myself, not actually, because I came through Hungary, Germany, and I lived in that countries.
And you speak fluent German. Sorry, I have to. You speak
well,
perfect
yes, I learned it after, but before that, I was speaking Hungarian, and so we got used to the culture, at least here in Middle Europe. So for me, sure, it was not difficult to integrate, but I can imagine if a young journalist today, which also I am planning, to get some young journalists here, maybe even for short times, to cover the events at that building. I am sure I cannot compare them with myself that time. It will be difficult for them. Although the world also changed, in these years. When we came to Europe in the 70s, I mean, the televisions are not available in every house. But nowadays, from everyone maybe in Namibia, from his mobile, he can follow, the international news and events, and he has more information about what is going on here in Vienna, and maybe before he came here, he can find out in which district he is going to live. So it is a little bit easier. But the integration to come to the people, this is also needs maybe more energy anyhow, because if somebody is just involved in his works and like in the building, and there is no social events, to bring people together, so maybe you stay 30 years without talking to him. This is also a fact. And even here, for example, in Austria, I live in a building, and with some people, I have a very good relation, and we could get together. But with other people, maybe 20 years, only we see each other, even we don't say hello, hello. This is a fact with which we have to live. So, I mean, there is all possibilities.
So you say because of the open of media and people have more exposure to the world, it may be easier, but it's a personal thing and it takes maybe from both sides?
Yes. Some people coming from outside, maybe also they are responsible that, to be close, not, they don't open themselves. Well, here in Austria, I discovered that, for example, taking the train from Vienna to Salzburg, sitting there, the people here, they grown up, or it is their habit, everyone to keep his distance for him. But really I experience, if, I start talking to one of them or the other one, I can bring them together. So I get the know-how. If I would like, to sleep, okay, I keep a distance. If I would like to bring the people together, I can make that. This, I have practiced it many times, and it works. So I advise my colleagues and the young people who come here, please talk to the people, not give ideas that the people are close, So sometimes maybe this is their habits, they are shy.
So you say it's a habit, it's an attitude, and one shouldn't assume that they're...
Yes.
Interesting. I would suggest you become the integration expert for the new government in Austria, whoever it will be. They need some help. No, this is interesting. So you say you then actually, because you learned it, you can overcome it.
Yes, really. This is, I experienced it, as I told you, from Budapest. Always I said, I have received my diploma in chemical engineering, but the biggest diploma is the diploma of integration. Because I never been to Vietnam, but living with Thieu from Vietnam, I learned from him a lot. And the same thing, Bolivia and all these countries.
Thank you, that's a good point. Let us move a little bit further into the United Nations.
Yes.
In preparation to this talk, I read an interesting article, and the journalist asked a colleague of yours in New York the following question. this journalist asked, in times where apparently nationalism is growing and we are indeed on the brink again of several large conflicts, which we don't have to mention here, I think everybody knows that. Yes. And the question was, can the UN save us? And I thought that was of course hyperbole, yeah, but how do you feel about the United Nations? It's being so much criticized. What for you is its purpose? Is it relevant? Can it really save us?
Well, to depend or to put the whole task, on the UN, I wouldn't say this is good advice, because after the Second World War, came this idea. And the UN itself is developing, and there is always reforms, and there is how you call it? People also practice criticism, on the work of the UN, because I am there and I feel that. But sometimes theoretically, maybe we think that the UN could do more. In different areas, whether it is social or economically or the technical assistance and all these things. But I would say the NGOs, for example, also they can learn from the work of the UN, because the UN at the beginning is intergovernmental organization, but its staff members are paid, well paid, from the governments. But other people can learn from the work of the UN. Let us take an example. For example, the UNIDO. The UNIDO give technical assistance. But I myself, and this is also really what I have learned here, you can build with help of some colleagues in your area, for example, the area of renewable energy, for example, because I myself, my background also is a chemical engineer, to build that group which can play that role which is similar to the role of the UNIDO. And of course, here comes the question, who is going to cover the costs, for example, for the team which will be sent, for example, to Africa. Just another example, I give it to you, because I am here for a long time and I got to know many representatives of different African, how you call it, ambassadors, ministers. So I received a call from the governor of White Nile in Sudan, calling the people who of that region to participate or to help or to assist in the development of the state or the region. And then I spoke, to the ambassador here and also to the Sudanese representative at the UN, and I told them, just to pay money, that is not great help. But I think we have to help with our know-how, with our relations here in which we built all these years. And really, we made some seminars at the Chamber of Commerce and also with the UN, with some organizations who willingly would like to participate in the building or the development of this region. The same thing, I made contact to Hungary. And there also we are going to select some people or some companies or NGOs who works in the different areas, water or waste management or renewable energy. And then we built a delegation to visit Africa or Sudan. And there they sit with the officials and see together what they can get from the technical assistance here in Europe. And of course, then comes the question of financing and all these things. So anyhow, I think outside the UN, the NGOs or the institutions, they can also learn and do the same thing, because the UN, only the UN itself cannot solve all these problems.
Especially as you mentioned that actually the staff is being paid from the individual countries.
Of course.
So that means, of course, the interests of the individual countries represented through the staff.
This is also a problem, yes. That's true.
I think we can imagine what that means. All of this, what the UN was founded, actually next week is on the 24th of October, is the 72nd birthday. It was, I think, 24th of October 1945 that it was constituted and followed the Völkerbund, the Association of Nations that was before. Yes. Globalization, what we say with this term, what we mean with this term, different people mean different things. It has certainly, after the Second World War, taken an enormous leap. I mean, yes, in our lifetimes, in the last 30 years, my God, what has happened, yeah? A lot of people use globalization in a simply negative term. I don't have to expand on that because that's in the other news. Could you define what it means for you and what you would see as positive or possibly negative about globalization?
Well, just from my experience here in Europe, when I came to Hungary, because, you know, to go from a country to other, I mean, the borders are closed. This is negative. Of course, with the time or with the fall of the Soviet Union, it was easier to go from one country to another. And now we are living in the European Union. And under globalizations, I mean, the big companies, without any complications, they found a route in the ex-socialist countries. This is also, well, in one side it is good, but on the other side it is not good, because I lived good advantages, for example, in the old system in Hungary. If just we look for, we look for the education for all. Many people also come from the, what you call it, third world, and you know, they could find education there, technical assistance. And that time also, everyone in the country, he had health insurance. Transport was almost, you know, free. But people also, you know, you cannot keep the people, you know, in a condition like that, because some people, you know, they would like to have a banana, they would like, you know, to have Swiss chocolate. Now, the old system has gone, and the big companies came there. If you look at in the supermarkets for the Hungarian, for example, product, you will find very few articles in the supermarkets. And here, there is a question whether the old products or the old way was better for the people, for the farmers, for example, or maybe the new one. For me, I would say really people to make that change very, how you call it, quickly, it was disadvantage. It is better to go gradually, something like reform. And that is why now I can understand the reform in China. Because if the Chinese radically, they change everything, I think it will be catastrophe in the world.
Interesting, they started the big party congress today, so the Chinese are working on it. This is very good. You've actually made a nice bridge for me. How would you define, so you said globalization goes both ways. Yes. There's advantages and disadvantages, of course. What would you define as the main tasks, the main challenges actually, that we are faced with as a global community at the moment. Maybe you have a little bit of an answer for them, but what would you say is really the main stuff that we have to now urgently deal with?
Well, if you can help me a little bit to make more clarification.
Yeah, basically, you know, would you say, what is it? Is it environmental challenges? Is it subsequent? What are the when you wake up in the morning, you go to the UN, if you were the boss, you would say like, okay guys, let's do this, you know, this is, we've got to tackle that.
Well, actually the wars going around, of course, this is something horrible. And sometimes how easy some people, you know, can make a war, you know. Just if we look, you know, in the Middle East, also in Africa, because I went several times to South Sudan, and I know how easily, you know, a war break out, because the interest of the people also who, I don't know, maybe they have more power in the world, you know. I don't know. I am, as a journalist, really sometimes just, I think we all, you know, would like to have peace. But in the same time, people would like to have war because they are living from war. So this is also make me a little bit worried. And what you have mentioned, of course, the environment. This is also a big challenge for us. And when we see, you know, for example, the how you call it, the world temperature, and some animals who disappeared from our world, of course we have to think about that. And also the hunger, because sometimes we are living here easily, you get your breakfast, and it is no problem, you know, to think of your lunch or your dinner, but some people are dying, you know, the same moment we are talking here. This is also, I think, all this, they are concerned, and this make us worry, really.
This was on Monday was World Food Day, on the 16th, yes. On the 17th, on Tuesday, was Anti-Poverty Day. Yes, yes. The UN has many of those days, yes. All very commendable. But what can it really do? Is it a platform for communication? Is there something that happens behind closed doors we don't know about? Sometimes it sends troops somewhere. Where could it improve? How could we help it to become even more active?
Well, I think we have to talk about it. And everyone, you know, he has maybe a certain power or a certain way, you know, to react with the questions, because just when you mentioned the world hunger, I'm sure if the leaders of the world, they would like to solve this problem within 1 week, they can solve it. But I cannot advise here what channels people can follow to stop that, but anyhow, this is an issue. Always we have to think about it, to talk about it, and this is our struggle anyhow, must be.
Then let me go another step. You're Sudanese? Is that
Sudanese origin.
Okay, yes. I'm sure you have a tribal...
I have, yes, tribal Austrian documents which enable me easy to go to any European countries.
Okay, no, sorry, that was my mistake, I mispronounced. I said I think you also have a tribal. Do you have a wider ethnicity that you feel?
Yes, in Sudan, we grown up in a society consists of more than, I think, 500 ethnic groups. You know, these are, you call it tribes, you know. They speak more than 100 different languages, not dialects, because in the Arabic language people used to use the word dialect, but there are languages, you know, just like Hungarian, German, and all these things.
The reason why I'm asking this is Africa, I know little about it, but good friends are there and I meet them. it's incredibly dynamic at the moment, and I'm sure you're still in close contact. So I would like to ask you to explain a little bit to us where Africa is now and where it might be going. We mentioned also the Chinese before, so there's a lot going on. Could you, from your perspective, give us a little bit more insight?
Well, just to tell you the time when I came to Hungary, because that time really it was peaceful, I mean in the 70s. Before that, you know, there were these, how you call it, the
colonial wars, until the 60s with France.
In the 70s, when I came there, the picture of Africa here in Europe was also a very nice picture.
Animals,
safari, and all these things. So always I say, without war, there is no problem in Africa. Just take an example. The biggest tribe in Sudan is the Denka. They live very, how you call it, naturally. And they don't have clothes. But if you follow their lives the whole year, they have no problems. They don't need any assistance from the government, you know. But then come the war and create all these problems. So Africa, really without war, could be a paradise, because I think 15% of the world oil is in Africa. 40% of the gold in the world, it is in Africa. And I think 80% from the rare metals. So this is, in a way, it is good, but from the other way, of course, bring you the interest of other people and the war and all these things. Just we can imagine, we remember in Congo. Congo is very rich in of minerals. I think more than 15 million people died. And people brought here to Europe, to Belgium, milliard of money, of course, if you, in franc or in dollars, you know. But if you go to, how you call it, to Congo, you don't find, you know, a highway there, you know. People, they don't want to make it. And people didn't make any effort, you know, to finish, for example, the malaria. So I think that
the people themselves, or is it the people themselves or other interests that?
Well, I think the people, of course, now, you know, the world is connected. The interest of people, so you find native people, international people working together, and they don't look, you know, for the interest of the normal people or the, how you call it, the simple people, you know, who are looking there, you know, because this is a very strong lobby.
Last question, really, that, and it's, I was thinking if I should ask you, but I will ask you. I will ask you. When I looked at the UN, it was interesting to me to see how the power is represented there, of big countries versus small countries and so on and so forth. You just mentioned colonialism. And I have a feeling that the world map is indeed changing. There's new players coming, different, strong, also small countries are standing up and demanding their rights. And I think we live in a post-colonial world that is rearranging itself. And when I look then at the reaction of the big country, the biggest one at the moment economically, I don't want to mention it, and several others, it seems to me that racism plays a huge role in the inability or unwillingness of really changing things. Is that just me, or is that really there? Is there such a thing as fundamental racism in Western society that tries to keep other nations down? I'm asking that as a European, you know, I'm asking that for myself. Is that there, or is it an illusion?
Well, because, you know, do we speak about Europe here, or maybe the UN inside?
No, I would speak, that's a good question. I think it's reflected.
Yes.
That was my feeling. I see it reflected everywhere. If you say the staff is paid by the nation states,
Yes.
then of course it reflects the sentiment of the nation state.
Yes.
So I see it reflected, yes, inside out. I don't think it makes a
Well,
difference. Is it a factor? Is racism a factor in the trouble?
Racism, if you think that inside the UN, very rare, you cannot practice that inside. Immediately, the reaction will be very strong and very fast. But if you come out here to Europe, I was just telling you, the history, my personal history when I came there. In the socialist countries, on the contrary, we were living really very equality, and they were against racism, and they were helping people who are under racism. For example, in South Africa, that was a system. And now as we live more than maybe 30 years here in Europe, I think the world is developing better like before. Because why there is racism in that form, for example, which the Africans, experienced in America, is no more. Because if we live to see a black president, the majority who elected him, they are white people. But you find, but I don't think that is the big issue, because the interest of the people in the wealth, in getting money, business, maybe that is the issue which brings people together. But when people, speak about America, and I think the presidency is, how you call it, is racism or something like that, I think people who are against him, the white people, are more than black people. But of course, there is some small problems here occur from time to time, which you cannot take them as, for example, as an example. Sometimes you find a reason or execution, because people, if they don't know each other, that is also a cause for see each other as enemies. But when they get close together, when there is no fear, and people now here, for example, in Europe, they are more concerned in ensuring their jobs, and if they can make a cooperation or working together with an African country, and that will bring maybe benefits, money, something, income. Of course, the people are. So this is my personal judgment.
Thank you. So you're saying these are exceptions, there's
Yes,
still too much,
exceptions.
but they are not the general rule, because if people have a mutual benefit of cooperation, then it doesn't matter. And if you get to know each other more, it falls away.
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
I'm glad. Thank you. Last question to you. What are your immediate plans for the future with UNCAV? What is it that you are about to realize? What would you like to realize, and how can one maybe assist that?
Well, because now in the at the leadership of the UNCAV, I am with my team in the executive committee. We are 3 years now, and we have to have another period for 3 years. But in these 3 years, I think we went through also a reform, because also we have our inside, we can say, problems, and we could achieve many things, but not all our dreams, came out. So we hope, in the next period, it doesn't matter what position, I will have, whether president or maybe a member, but to intensify to the working together, and especially also to know people who are working in the media outside the VIC, like idealism. I mean, your how you call it, your
press, non-profit.
Yes, your press. So this is, I think, my concern: how to work together to achieve or to reach our goals. And I think today, by visiting you here in your headquarters, I think this is a very important step, that we know each other, and maybe we can create, or maybe we can build cooperation, and coming together, maybe also with UN bodies there, to be close to them and to understand them, and maybe we can advise, or maybe we can criticize them. And so this is, I think, how I see for the next period.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Us all the very best, and I hope you enjoy the autumn and you come back to us.
And I thank you and your team for this wonderful interview. I hope people can find out some informations which can help them in knowing the UNCAV, the UN, and in the future maybe we can make other interviews. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dear friends of IP, this was the first English Kitchen Talk, and for me personally, a wonderful one. If you feel the same, or if you feel totally different, drop us a mail or write me a letter, as I like to say. I thank again, Abdalla. Thank you. Shukra.
Idealism prevails. Make the world a better place.